All right. I feel like I've kind of been on a roll recently because the video I uploaded yesterday, Goldobin and what we think about him, that was done all in one take. It's been a while since I've made a full-length video with only one take for the commentary. If you didn't know, BTS, by the way, I cut things up because I mess up my words and I go over it again. Usually videos take a few takes to get it right going through the full commentary. But yesterday's video on Goldie was one take. In fact, the Virtanen Doghouse video from a few weeks ago was also one take, I believe, too. So I'm gonna see if I can try to get through this one in one take because I feel like I'm fairly educated on this subject. Let's talk about the Vancouver Canucks lineup, because there are forwards, there are defensemen, there are players that can fight for a spot on the Vancouver Canucks, and ultimately there are players who I feel like should be in those spots more than others. So let's just go over my ideal Vancouver Canucks lineup for the 2019-20 season. I'm going to have two lineups here, one with Roussel and one without. And also, if my lineups are very similar, if not exactly similar to that of a certain lineup displaying website, I fairly apologize, and honestly, I believe it's just the website having good taste. So let's go over to the Vancouver Canucks first line that I think should be the case here. We have Ferland, Pettersson, and Boeser. This is no surprise to anybody here. Ferland is a capable 40-point winger who provides a physical presence. He's a guy who could get in there, force those gritty areas, stand up for Petey and Boeser, and get himself involved in a panoply of ways, from offense and through physical play as well. Ferland is a guy who I hated for years because of that playoff series back in 2015. And seeing him on the top line of the Canucks isn't something that I am very much opposed to at all. On him is Pettersson and Boeser, the center and the right wing on this line. We saw the chemistry these two had. If Boeser is healthy, he could realistically get 60, 70 points in the year. If Pettersson is healthy, he could realistically get 90. It's crazy the amount of points these two guys can get. It's just, they're so good. There's no debating that. Everybody knows that the potential is there. And if Ferland is on this line, I could realistically see Ferland getting upwards of 50 points. He's gotten 40 in the past, and it doesn't guarantee anything like he's going to get 50, but playing with Petey and Boeser, if he knows how to play their game and mesh with them well, he could definitely get those points. At the same time, though, it wouldn't surprise me if Ferland only gets about 30 or 40, but at the same time, if he does his job, which is the physical presence, which is standing up for Petey, so we don't have the Mathesons and the Kotkanyemis and the Danik Martels on Stecher happening anymore, then I think it's worth the money too, especially for the cheap deal that we got him on. Going over onto our second line, we have ourselves Tanner Pearson, Bo Horvat, and JT Miller. Now let's start off with Miller because he's the new guy, he's the unfamiliar face around town, and he's the guy who people are going to have their eyes on because we traded a first-round pick for him. I've loved what I've seen out of JT Miller this preseason so far. He's been an offensive dynamo, shifty, passing things off, creating offense, and I've really been a fan of his game. There's a reason he cost a first-round pick, and you could debate all you want on whether or not that was overpayment. Cough, cough, it was, but at the same time, I feel like Miller, who was a guy who could consistently get 40 to 50 points in this league, is going to be a great helping tool for Bo Horvat, because last year, Horvat didn't have a consistent winger at all. He pretty much played with the entire team, and that was unfortunate. At the same time, though, Bo still got like 50, 60 points in that span of time, and playing with a consistent winger who's good, I think Horvat could realistically reach that 70-point mark. I predicted that 70-point mark back in my Bo Horvat expectations video, And Tanner Pearson is the final piece of this puzzle. He's the guy who came in from the Pittsburgh trade for Goodbranson, and he had a ton of goals. He was on pace for like 38 over the span of 82 games if you only take his Vancouver Canucks production. He was really hot, and I hope that continues. We've been seeing Pearson getting a few goals here and there in the preseason, and playing on the second line, I think he's still got an ability to produce offense. We saw that 70s line a few years ago. Tanner Pearson is still a legit NHL player, and if it comes here with Bo and JT Miller on the second line, I would be very, very happy to see that. Then, our third line. This is where things get a little bit controversial, because for the third line, I have Sven Baertschi, Adam Gaudette, and Jake Virtanen. Gaudette, man, he's been working really hard. He's been really trying to make this team throughout the preseason, and I think he's been doing an extraordinary job doing so. Actually, not extraordinary. His defensive play and his minus category has been kind of noteworthy, I will say, but he has been producing offense, which is awesome to see for sure. As for Sven Baertschi, hopefully he plays a full 82 games. If he does, I think he's a 40-point winger in this league. But there are no guarantees for any of that for sure, but I would love to see him playing on this spot. As for Jake Virtanen, he's a guy who I think can definitely get 20 goals this year. It's just we don't know if Virtanen plays the way he plays in order to get those goals, because Virtanen could easily play like a 20-goal player one night and play like a 5-goal player the next night. It's really up and down with Virtanen, and if we see that consistency with his game, I think we're definitely going to see great things out of him this year. But this third line of Gaudette, Baertschi, and Virtanen is mostly highlighted by that center, because some would argue that Gaudette isn't in that spot yet. Cough, cough me. But I think if Gaudette is given that opportunity, he will roll with it, because we've seen the drive throughout this preseason so far. So if he's able to fight out a Sutter or a Beagle for that spot, I would be very, very happy with that, and I would love to see things work out that way. I'd love for my previous self to be proven wrong, because previously I did say that I don't know if Gaudette is ready to shoulder the full responsibility of a third-line role for 82 games. If he is ready, then awesome. As for the fourth line, this is where things kind of veer off a little bit from the websites that I've seen. Yeah, the websites that I've seen do have this exact lineup as their lines, and I didn't realize it until after I actually looked them up. But we have very similar tastes, which is good. But my fourth line goes like Loui Eriksson, Brandon Sutter, and Tyler Motte. Yeah, I have Motte in here. So Loui Eriksson, you kind of have to have him in there. Little things, Loui, he PKs, he's $6 million worth of salary. You kind of have to play him. If it were up to me, I wouldn't necessarily have him on my team in general, but we have him, so oh well. Okay, not oh well, that's very disrespectful, but he's here, so he's gonna play. As for the fourth line center, it was a toss-up between Beagle and Sutter, but ultimately I think Sutter is a more valuable asset when he's in the lineup. He contributes offense pretty well, I'm not gonna lie. It's just that he's not here all too often, which is the case for him. But the thing that he has over Beagle in my eyes is that work ethic and that drive. We've seen Sutter sacrifice his body like crazy in the past, and it's led to some pretty bad injuries. Beagle is not somebody who I can necessarily say does the same thing. He plays more of a safer, more relaxed, more predator waiting for his prey kind of game, and Sutter is just out there trying to get involved, and it hurts him in general. But I like that attitude from Sutter a little bit more than Jay Beagle. But we have ourselves Tyler Motte on the right wing spot, who I really, really like. I love Tyler Motte. He's just a bulldog out there. He's always getting his head involved in the play, and he does it safely too. He doesn't really get injured all too often, but as an energy guy on the fourth line to provide some hits, to provide some puck battles, I love Tyler Motte in this role. Now, there are other wingers who could have been in this spot, like Antoine Roussel, but he's long-term injury reserve. We do have Tim Schaller, who I don't think is on the team. I really don't think he's on the team. I don't think he's a Canuck by the time the season rolls around. We also have a few other guys too, like Tyler Grayovac, Justin Bailey, all those, etc. But for the most part, this is my lineup here. Nikolay Goldobin, I'm sorry, man, I don't see you with the Canucks. He hasn't really displayed the necessary skills in order to display to me that he is staying on this team. But let's go over onto the defensive side of things. Geez, this video is already 10 minutes long. Edler, Myers, Hughes, Tanev, Benn, Stecher. This is how I have things laid out. Edler, because he's the number one guy. He is probably the best defenseman on the team at the moment. At the moment, I said. Tyler Myers, he's on the first pairing because he kind of has to be. He's a big presence. He can eat up those minutes. He can play, and he's a right-handed guy, so yeah. Our second line, Hughes and Tanev. I love Quinn Hughes. He's probably the most skilled defenseman on the Canucks, and playing with a guy like Chris Tanev in a shutdown role would be great because Tanev would allow Hughes to play his game, and this second pairing will get all the secondary ice time minutes, which is all Quinn Hughes needs to produce offense in my opinion, and yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Produce offense as a defenseman. As for our third pairing, Jordie Benn and Troy Stecher. This is kind of weird because you have a legit top 4 defenseman in Troy Stecher playing on the 6th spot, and that's something that I don't necessarily like. I like playing our guys where they deserve to be, but in my opinion, you're not going to play Stecher over Myers and Tanev, so just the way things roll out right here, this is how I see it. But Stecher will get power play time, he'll get PK time, he'll get his time to be in the lineup, and the 6th spot on the defensive side of things is just 5-on-5. As for Jordie Benn, he's a safe two-way defenseman, and I really liked what he had to do with Montreal last season, so having him here is a pretty good plus for me. Markstrom and Demko are our other players in net, and that's no debate. There's really no debate in that. As for scratches, I have Antoine Roussel, Jay Beagle, and Oscar Fantanberg. Once Roussel comes back, I see him taking over that Loui Eriksson spot on the 4th line, and Eriksson, you can get traded, you can get sent to Utica, you can do whatever, you can go to the press box for all I care, but I don't think Eriksson is on this team once Roussel comes back. Well, you know, I think he'll still be on the team. It's just that if I were the one running things, once Roussel comes back, then Eriksson is gone. But overall, this is what I see. This is my lineup for the Vancouver Canucks. It's really, really similar to Daily Faceoff. It's pretty much the same, and I didn't realize it until I looked at it, as I said, but this is how I have things. Hope you enjoyed this video. Social.9. This video was not recorded in one take. There were a few interruptions here and there that really just disturbed my mojo, and now I'm sitting here, I think it's like 6 or 7 takes later, and bye.